The first anniversary of the end of the Karabakh War is what we're going to talk about. November 10 was the first anniversary of the end of the 44-day war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Those 44 days rearranged the political power of the Caucasus region that had existed for almost 30 years. In the early 1990s, Armenia invaded the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, occupying additionally 20% of Azerbaijan's internationally recognized sovereign territory. The invasion and occupation were accompanied by a horrendous ethnic cleansing, resulting in the expulsion of 800,000 Azerbaijani civilians from their homelands. These forcibly displaced Azerbaijanis scattered around Azerbaijan, living in tent camps and school dormitories for many years. The invasion and total ethnic cleansing of Azerbaijan in the early 1990s was one of the world's greatest injustices committed after World War II. Azerbaijan lost the First Karabakh War because it did not have regular armed forces. For 70 years under Soviet rule, Russians were not keen on training Muslim Azerbaijanis, assigning the Azerbaijani conscripts mostly to non-military areas, and rarely promoting Azerbaijani officers to top ranks. It was in fact the continuation of policies of the preceding Russian Empire, which also discriminated against Muslim Azerbaijanis. On the other hand, Armenia never faced such discrimination. Christian Armenians were seen as trusted allies of Russia in the Caucasus, both under the Russian Empire and the Soviet rule. Armenians always got the best training and were appointed to the highest ranks in the Soviet military. Nevertheless, when Armenia attacked Azerbaijan in the First Karabakh War, Azerbaijan was able to put together some armed forces to defend the country against the invasion. No wonder it took Armenia 6 years, from 1988 to 1994, to complete the invasion. However, Russian military support to Armenia, with Russian soldiers fighting shoulder to shoulder with Armenians, changed the equilibrium and Azerbaijan lost. In the early 1990s, Azerbaijan was at a loss. Governance was absent. The economy was in shambles. Fortunately, the capital of Baku was many kilometers to the east, the distance proving to be the best defense against Armenia and its foreign soldiers. Slowly, the domestic instability was eliminated. The economy leapt forward when contracts were signed with Western companies in Western countries to develop Azerbaijani oil fields in the Caspian Sea. Internationally, Armenia ignored international pleas to return the occupied lands to Azerbaijan. The world community, through the United Nations and other organizations, passed many resolutions over the years demanding Armenian forces leave the occupied lands. They stayed. Perhaps the lowest point of this conflict was the massacre of hundreds of Azerbaijani men, women, and children the night of February 26, 1992, when a combined Armenian-Russian attack on a mountain town named Khojaly degenerated into a war crime based on ethnicity. That, by the way, is the one single definition of genocide. The battles continued until a ceasefire was negotiated between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Armenian forces, bolstered with foreign money and weapons from Russia, stayed in the occupied Azerbaijani territory, expelling any Azerbaijanis who managed to survive the war. In that brutal war, 20,000 Azerbaijanis were killed, 4,000 went missing and are still missing, and 100,000 were wounded. 50,000 Azerbaijanis were disabled for the rest of their lives. After the ceasefire of 1994, a line of contact was drawn, and the two militaries looked across that line for the next 26 years. Occasional artillery shells were fired and flare-ups on the ground occurred in isolated instances. Armenia established a so-called Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh in the occupied areas of Azerbaijan, claiming it to be independent. No country in the world, including Armenia, recognized it. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan was building a new military. It gained experience by having its soldiers involved in the war on terror, assisting the United States and allied countries in Iraq and Afghanistan. It sent military officers to other countries to learn new methods and new weaponry. It spent 2 decades building a modern army and extremely well-trained special forces. Azerbaijan broadened its international scope by following an independent foreign policy, building various alliances in the West and East, from Turkey to Israel to Pakistan to the United Kingdom and the United States. Many countries saw a strong friend in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan learned its lessons well. Like a sponge, it absorbed modern technology as fast as it could. It sent large numbers of bright young college students all over the world. Many came home full of ideas to grow and mature into a new, thriving Azerbaijan in business, in education, and mostly how to live in the 21st century. So last year, a modern 2020 Azerbaijan with a modern army was attacked by Armenian missiles fired at ground close to the newly built Azerbaijani natural gas pipeline that runs from the Caspian Sea through the Republic of Georgia and Turkey to Europe. What made these missiles so noticeable is that they were fired at regions far away from the line of contact. Azerbaijan's army is equipped with 2021 equipment developed and made in countries with top-notch technology. Israel has developed missiles and missile defense systems that Azerbaijan has incorporated into its army. From Turkey came unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, that fire missiles at tanks, trucks, and air defense and radar installations from above. The targets cannot defend themselves. Thus, within just 44 days of war, Azerbaijan managed to liberate almost half of its occupied territory. Once the strategically important mountaintop city of Shusha was liberated, Armenia's ally Russia stepped in to prevent the total loss of Karabakh, and a capitulation deal was signed. Around 2,000 Russian peacekeepers were deployed in parts of Karabakh where the ethnic Armenians live. Azerbaijan announced that those ethnic Armenians are Azerbaijani citizens, complete with equal rights. Armenia withdrew its troops from additional 3 occupied districts. Azerbaijan recovered 10,000 square kilometers of its sovereign territory. Now Russian peacekeepers are stationed in Karabakh, although their time of service is limited to 5 years with a possibility of extension to another 5 years after 2025. It seems Russia has no intention to leave Karabakh anytime soon. No wonder that it has been building a huge infrastructure for its so-called peacekeepers, from hospitals to houses of worship. Russia has also allowed Armenian armed groups to operate in Karabakh as a leverage to use against Baku in case it begins demanding the departure of Russian troops from its sovereign territory. Even the so-called authorities of the so-called Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh are allowed by Russia to continue their work, creating an illusion of an independent republic, while it's clear that now all those so-called authorities exist at the mercy of Russian peacekeepers, again as a leverage against Azerbaijan. Then there is the matter of Iran. Next door, Iran is very close diplomatically and politically to Armenia. For almost 30 years, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, a terror organization and sponsor of international terrorism, were using Armenian-occupied territory as a pathway to smuggle Iranian and Afghan-manufactured heroin, pass it through Armenia to Europe, where the Guards' leadership was earning millions in dollars in order to finance various terrorist schemes from Lebanon to Syria to Yemen. Azerbaijan has stopped that trade. Iran is not happy and even threatened Azerbaijan, holding recently large-scale military exercises along Azerbaijan's border with Iran. Azerbaijan did not yield and Iran had to back down. November 10th was the anniversary of the signing of the ceasefire a year ago, 44 days after the war started. It is estimated that Armenia planted around 1 million landmines in the occupied Azerbaijan lands, and also 10,000 square kilometers of territory that Azerbaijan has retaken was looted and razed to the ground by Armenians and their Iranian partners. Almost every single house of expelled Azerbaijanis was plundered and destroyed. Since November 10 of 2020, Azerbaijan has cleared 48,000 landmines planted by Armenian troops in the occupied territories. To start bringing back the forcibly displaced Azerbaijani citizens to their native villages and towns, Azerbaijan has been pouring hundreds of millions of dollars rebuilding the liberated areas, constructing new roads, highways, tunnels, water systems, power stations, telecommunications, 3 modern international airports, smart villages, and agricultural parks. The first international airport was just inaugurated. It was built in the liberated city of Fuzuli in a record-setting speed within just 8 months. Next year's budget for the reconstruction of liberated areas is $1.2 billion. It seems both Armenia and Azerbaijan are now moving towards more concrete steps of normalizing their relations and opening all transport communications. The normalization of Azerbaijan and Armenia relations will also inevitably lead to normal relations between Armenia and Turkey. I hope that by the time of the second anniversary, we will see open borders and communications between Armenia and its neighbors to the east and west.